Hi guys, welcome back to T.N.T Garage. Today we're going to tackle a couple of small projects that have just been kind of piddly, but I want to get them out of the way. And one of the things is going to be taking care of the air hat that's going to supply the air to the motor from the factory air box. The second thing is I'm going to work on actually getting the cluster mounted and getting the cover on it and the gauge bezel to mount it inside the car. So that being said, let's quit wasting time and let's get to it. As you can see, my air hat is now in two pieces. I actually cut this in half last night. Now, originally, this would mount on the throttle body like that. It'd come out to the passenger side of the truck like this, and it'd have that port for the air silencer. So I cut that out, and what I did was, we're going to flip it and put it back together to mount it facing forward in the car, which actually resulted in a little bit of a happy accident. This nipple here is for the tube that goes to the valve cover for crankcase ventilation. Now when it was mounted like this, it just elbowed right down, but now it'll still be facing the right side of the engine, or the passenger side. So the only issue we have with flipping it is that we've got a little bit of a mismatch in here. So I'm going to take my flat wheel and kind of get this to match a little better, and we'll put it together. So I'm going to get started once I find my flap wheel. That's my roll lock disc. There it is. Little mini flap wheel here. And we're just going to clean this up and try to get that to match. Now you might be asking yourself, why go through all this trouble when you could buy an air hat? Well, a few reasons. One, this is absolutely a budget build. I'm not pressed for time. You know, that's all I really have invested. These are parts I have. And also, the throttle body opening of the Vortec throttle body. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's not a common size, but I already have this, and it will look more or less factory once I'm done. So it has all the provisions I need and will fit the factory air tube and mass airflow sensor, so that's a plus. Now, when it comes to mounting this, I'm going to drill out the rivets for this clip here. This can go away, this clip that runs a bolt through it, because that was for the factory air silencer. And as you can see, this is going to be a problem for airflow. So since this is going to be the front facing part, we're going to cut this out and just make it flush with the rest of it. I'm going to leave some of this down here so we can have a floor to the inside. But first, we're going to try and get those rivets out of there and try to find the right drill bit and blow them out. Yeah, that might work. There. Now, our camera fell down. Let's fix that. I know, it's stunning quality we have here. Now we got this out, and I'll be able to figure out a way to mount it up front. I've got a piece of aluminum stock here that I'm actually going to use for quite a few things. So now that's out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get the death wheel, and we're going to cut this piece out, and then we'll start putting it back together. Helps if you turn the compressor back on. All right, now that we got that massive air restriction cut out, and I've got the floor of this all smoothed out. And one thing you want to remember when you're joining two knot-like pieces is to get them as smooth as you possibly can, especially in a direction of airflow. So even, say if I didn't take the time, and this was actually smaller than this part, it wouldn't inhibit airflow so much. But if this was smaller than this part, it'll create a bunch of turbulence just above the throttle body, and I'm not saying you're going to lose a ton of performance, but smoother air equals more power, basically. So, how are we going to join these two pieces? Well, to start with, we're going to use this 2-part epoxy just to attach it in this corner and down here, because with this cut, I can actually raise this side to meet this. So, we will take our little cardboard here to mix some up. They even give you a plastic stirrer stick now. There must be a guy there just eating popsicles all day and cutting these down. So, do a little 2-part there. Oh, that comes out fast. That should probably do it. Oh, God, don't want to lose the cat. I need to use this later. So, we got that. We're going to mix this up in a nice gray color. Just kind of work it together. And then we'll start applying it to our project here. Just kind of, you don't really want a whole lot of it inside the intake tube, because this will be a bear to sand out. So we're going to just get it on the surfaces that I want it. And that should provide the stick that I need to put these two pieces together. I'm going to put a little more on actually. Put some over here. That might be enough there. This would probably be the best way to do it. Get that lined up best we can there. And then just, sit here and hold it together for about an hour and you'll be fine. So, we'll get to the music, as I do nothing. Alright, well, we're waiting for that to set up. We're going to work on first the bezel and the plastic cover for our gauge cluster. Now, the original cluster, the bezel ramped out and had a curved piece on it. So, what we're going to do, and I already did this, is I cut down the original black bezel to make it thinner. And that will lay on top of our cluster. Get it set up right here. Make sure she's in the pegs. There we go. And that sits right on there. Now, we got this nice big piece of plexiglass. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it, trace around this bezel, and cut it and put it right on, of course, drilling a hole for our trip reset. So, I'm going to grab a couple pieces and we'll get right back at that. Okay, now we'll grab our piece of plexiglass here, or whatever you want to call it. And we're going to lay it, screw it, I'll slide it in here. And we're going to take our bezel, and we're going to actually use this edge and the upper edge there, and we're going to mark it out. Now, I forgot to get a new Sharpie, so I got my son's old water-soluble markers here, and hopefully this works. Oh, that one's dead. Find one that works eventually. There we go. So, I'm going to trace just a little outside because the width of the blade will take up any added deviations, and we can always kind of trim down the edges a little later. Now, you want to make sure, obviously I've got plenty of plexiglass, but you want to make sure when you're doing this, leave a little extra material, because you can always take more off. You can't add back. So, kind of continue going around here. And that'll give us our general outline. So we can move the bezel somewhere safe-ish. And that's our outline. Using this edge, we're not wasting any material, and we just cut along this line. So, I'm going to switch back to the death wheel, and we'll chop her up. Well, over the sound of the air compressor running, I'm going to change my cutting wheel, mainly because you use these on plastic, and they start to get gummed up. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but you see that ridge around there? We don't want to use that on something like this. So, we'll put a fresh one on, and wait for it to explode. Always wear your safety glasses unless you can squint really well. And take it nice and slow. Next we're going to lay this flat so it doesn't move around too much. There we go. Alright. There we go. Now we just need to trim a little corner here. We'll get that knocked out. Once we get this out of the way. Alright, we got our rough cut. And just blast all these little dingleberries off here. As you can see, that'll probably work pretty well. I'm going to trim a little bit up to the top. But what we'll do is we'll switch over to a sanding disc and go ahead and get that trimmed up. So that's what I'll do right now. Once I find my other wrench. There we go. It'd be nice if I could find my other grinder. I wouldn't have to change arbors all the time. But this one in. Grab my big sanding disc. And now we'll just kind of sweep everything out of the way so we have a nice surface to work with, and just do my best to kind of hold this together while I sand it, which is going to be easier said than done, but well, if everything was easy, it wouldn't be fun to do, would it? Try and keep it so we have plenty of material to work with. Actually, that didn't take much at all, really. I can stand to trim the bottom of it, but I don't think that'll interfere with anything. So, that was fairly simple. The fun part's going to be go ahead and taking care of our little trip meter here. So, we're going to get the cluster back on the ground, blow the crap off of it, get our bezel fitted. Thankfully, they have these locating pegs. And now, why wouldn't there be a sticker over that? Well, we'll do it this way. So, We're going to get it set where we want it, which is in that approximate location. And that should be pretty close. If I screw it up, I got plenty of plexiglass. So we're going to start with a small hole. And try not to crack our plexiglass here. You don't want to put a whole lot of pressure, but you do want to tip over your camera. Just can't win today, can I? Anyway, so we got our basic hole there. We can actually step up a drill bit size now to probably that. That should be adequate. And there we go. That's pretty good for a first guess. So, as you can see, we'll have the gauge cover. And there's plenty of room for the needles inside to sweep. There we go. Excellent. All right. Now the fun part is getting our protective film peeled off. Which find the hole. There we go. You guys can see that should work fairly decently. We'll move it closer. I'm going to leave this outer protective on until I get this adhered to the inner bezel, but we get her lined up, it should work pretty nice. So we're going to change gears back and see if our hat's ready to go. Okay. We've got the cluster plastic adhering to the bezel, and now we can get to work on this. So you're probably looking at it, how are you gonna fill all them holes? Simple. We're gonna fiberglass it. So we got our nice fiberglass sheet here, which I'm sure won't make me itch later, and we will make our air hat out of this. So I'm going to cut a section out approximately the size I think I need with the world's worst pair of scissors. There we go. That should do it. Now we'll be able to kind of shape all this. Now you can see I could probably stand to trim this down. So what I'll do is I'll make a strip. Probably end up using 2 strips to wrap completely around. I could actually go a little further. Do it like that. And we can actually come around. And that one strip should handle all our needs. There we go. So, what we got here is we will form it, bring it around at an angle, and work it right there. I'm going to give myself just a little more. And that should allow us to form this in. I'll trim this. And we'll get going in a second. Okay, we got our piece trimmed here. As you can see, this will come around and we'll just wrap everything nicely. Now it's time to mix up the resin. So we're going to do, it's about a quarter to a quarter. So if you were to use a quarter can, you should use a quarter tube. So you probably should wear gloves with this. Let me just get that out of the way right now. But I don't have any and I've got other stuff to do. So we'll pour some resin in there. A little more just for flavor. We'll get our hardener and something I don't care about is a stir stick. I suppose we could probably use the putty knife, but I've got this old hitch pin here. That'll probably work to stir her up. Well, why wouldn't you be like that? Well, you bugger. Make you poke a hole in the damn end. Must not trust me. Yeah, that's probably good. Like I said, this hitch pin I don't care about. Stir it up real good. Yeah. Looks just like my mother's cooking. Inedible. Now, we're gonna just kind of base this on here. You want to saturate the fiberglass to get it to stick to your workpiece, which sometimes is easier said than done. I did scuff the intake tube up to kind of help along with this process, but we'll just work our way around. Get everything into place. As you can see, you'll be taking some fibers with it, but worry not, my friends. Everything will be all right in the end. Begin to wrap it around the other side. I know this is about as exciting as watching paint dry, but I just want to prove a point that it's not that scary to work with any kind of body materials, you know, or fiberglass or anything. I don't work with fiberglass personally very much, but I've done a lot more with plastic filler, and this is not a situation for plastic filler. So as I continue to work around, you can see over here, I just want to get the resin in to harden it. I don't want to push because that's where one of our holes are. So we'll just kind of work the resin onto it to kind of start saturating, and we could start pulling our mat just a little bit to tighten it up. And we'll continue working it in. I'm making a mess out of my workbench, but that's alright because I'm probably going to epoxy the top of it anyway, so, or put a piece of stainless up here. And as the fiberglass gets saturated, it goes where you want it to go for the most part. You just want to make sure you got plenty in there. To work with. There. Now on this side, we'll just roll our piece and continue applying the resin. Again, over the hole, don't push. Just kind of work the resin into the glass mat, drizzle it on, and let it do its thing. Smooth it out the best you can. If you really want to make it look pretty, you could probably come back over it with a little bit of kitty hair and some filler. But for right now, I think we'll be alright with that. Now you can see that's starting to cave in a little bit, so I'm just going to push it out. Kind of allow it to free form. And there we go. Now it might not look like much right now, but we got our holes covered. And we're going to have a fairly good transition for airflow. So I'm going to set it on something I don't care that it gets stuck to, which would probably be a spray paint cap. There we go. Because that I could just whack off of there. You could see how quickly you actually have to move. You see how this is already setting up? So, good thing I went as fast as I did. And as it's setting up, you can still kind of coax your fiberglass where you want it to go. Which I think that's going to turn out pretty well. So, this is why you wear gloves. I'm going to take some gasoline and clean my hands, which I don't recommend you do, but we all do it. So, there we go. We got that hole filled. I'll probably come back, smooth it out with like another piece of fiberglass and some more resin just to make it smooth on the outside. The inside should be fine. I'll probably trim a piece out to fit the hole to make the transition smooth for the air, and I'll finish that up with a brush. But as you can see, this side's covered, and it actually looks like it flows pretty good. I don't know how well you guys could see that. We'll move it up to the camera for you. Yeah, there we go. You see, that's got a nice transition now. This hole's completely covered. And this side, it's fairly decent. As far as airflow, if you look inside, which will grab you and do that, You can see that hole's covered and everything should be set to go. So I'm going to clean my hands and we'll get back at some other stuff. Well, there's a sneak preview of the new air hat. Like I said before, obviously I'm going to go in and lay some fiberglass inside, get rid of some of those fibers there, but lay it inside, resin it in so we have a nice smooth transition all the way through the air hat to the throttle body. And then we could put our tube and mass airflow sensor in there. And I've said this before, this is actually too small, and I just guessed while I was at the hardware store, but I'm going to take a piece of PVC like this, cut that out, and fiberglass that in there to match the end of the mass airflow sensor, which will be coming up in the next video. Unfortunately, I'm running out of time today, so far I've been just kind of fitting the cluster before I can get the brackets made, and we'll have brackets that go down to the factory studs down here to hold the cluster into place. Now, as far as a bezel over it, I know some people that are third gen guys might be a little worried that I might cut one of these up, and I'm not. What the plan is to go ahead and grab this here piece of aluminum, and we'll lay that and then trace the bezel on the outside and do the cut on the inside we need. And that way we have a nice custom bezel that will fit our gauge cluster and attach in a factory location. But I don't think that looks too bad. There's a little glare off of it, but I might just hardwire it so the gauge lights are always on. That way we don't have to deal with the glare. And of course, sitting back, it'll actually work out fairly decent. You know, we'll have all our gauges that we need and everything will work. That's the reason why I'm swapping to this cluster, is with the PCM of the truck and all the associated wiring, which is another thing I did, is I got the hole in the firewall fit so the bulkhead connectors of the wiring harness for this motor cluster and etc. come right through. And then we got the bulkhead connector here. The power distribution block will be mounted there, and then I'm going to mount the PCM vertically next to the washer fluid tank. So we're getting closer to a Vortec 350 4L80 powered Z28 Camaro, and this is all budget build, motor and transfer free to me out of a truck I owned, and it's all just labor at this point. Of course, I spent money on the headers, and I'm going to spend money in a few places, but very minimal compared to what an engine swap would be with new fuel injection setup and all its associated components, and running a 4L80 in an older car. Also, probably next video, we'll mount the cruise control up on the firewall, because that's going to work too. So, like I said, I'm out of time today, but the next video, we're going to finish up that air hat, get this air box outlet properly sized, get the bezel done, the cluster mount, and get the dash back together, and then we'll get the associated wiring inside the car, which is now there, including, but not limited to, our cluster wiring and the OBD2 port, which you absolutely need when you're switching to OBD2. One of the other small upgrades I did since the last time you seen was got this set of 16x8 IROC Z wheels, and I really think they look a lot better on this car than these old 15s. So that's something I'm really excited for, to get the car done, see it rolling on these gorgeous 16-inch wheels. Well, there we go, guys. I'd like to thank you all again for watching. Unfortunately, this project got cut short today. I actually have to go to work, and we'll continue on this a little bit of time, but I just wanted to get a little bit of stuff on this car out there for you guys that are wondering what's going on with it. So, like every time, have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.